Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Naishi from Renegade Games. Naishi is a two-player hand and board management game. There's a little bit of hand management here, there's some board management. The basic idea is you're trying to get cards into the right spots, and to do that you're going to be managing your hand to some degree. You're going to start off the game with 3 mountains in your hand, as well as 2 characters. You're going to pick one character, and then pass the other character to your opponent. They're going to do the exact same, so you're both going to end up with one character you picked, and one character that was passed. You're also going to have 5 stacks of cards with 6 cards in them, one card being face up, the top card, and you're trying to go ahead and manage your hand as well as your line. We have the river, we have the line, and we have your hand. Now at the end of the game, you're going to be placing your hand out behind your river. So we're actually going to start by shuffling this over here. So once you get your card, you're going to shuffle it, which means you have the mountains and the cards in different orders, and then you're going to play your hand or see your hand. Now if the game were to end right now, this hand would go lined up with your line, and this would be your current board setup at the very end of the game. You're going to have cards that are adjacent to each other. These 2 are adjacent, these 2 are adjacent, and these 2 are adjacent. These 2 are not adjacent, and this are not adjacent, obviously. That's going to be the core premise of what you're doing. You have a hand that you cannot simply change the order of it. But you currently have a whole lot of mountains, and mountains are going to score 1 point. If you have 1 mountain, you get 5 points. If you have 2 or more mountains, you lose 5 points, which means you want to end the game with 0 or 1 mountains, and the game with more than 1 mountain is going to result in negative 5 points. That's where each of these cards has a way that card scores, and it's going to be printed on the card, as well as in the rulebook and on the little player aid card that you have. This is where you have the 4 core actions in the game. The main action you're going to be taking most of the time is called developing your territory. When you develop your territory, you're going to look at the cards that are currently in the river over here. You're going to discard a card from your hand or from your line and take that matching card, putting it onto your, well, wherever you discarded it from. So for example, over here, right now we have this card over here. This card is going to be better off if it's in the front row. Specifically, if you have 1 in your line, not in your hand, it's going to be worth 3 points. And if you have 2, it's worth 8. So I'm going to go ahead and discard this card from my board over here and take this matching card, putting it onto my board in that spot. This card is going to turn face up, and the next player can go ahead and take those cards, again trying to juggle or do the same thing. That's the core thing you do. Develop your territory. You're going to be drafting a card into either your hand or into your river, trying to set yourself up for points at the end of the game. Because right now, over here behind this card over here, this card is a great card for me because this card is going to be 3 points if it's in my back line, and an additional 10 points if there's a banner right in front of it, and as of right now, that banner is in front of it, assuming all things stay the same. That's the core action. Develop your territory. You look at the 5 options, you try to figure out which one's going to work for you, and then you place it into your hand or into your line. Now, when you're doing develop your territory, there are 2 kind of actions you can do that modify that action. That's where these tokens are going to come into play, and you can spend them, place them onto your board to either going ahead. In fact, let's go ahead and show you. Let's take the other character right now. They have their hand over here. They're going to look at they have these cards. Let's shuffle them up over here, try to figure out where they're going. This is going to be their starting hand, and they don't like any of these cards. So what they're going to do is they're going to remove 2 cards. They're going to place this down, and they're going to burn 2 cards from the board over here. Let's burn this one, and we're going to burn this one over here. We're going to burn those cards, getting rid of them, flipping over the new cards, and then being able to take, that's exactly the same card, being able to take those cards and place them onto my board. In this case, we're going to go ahead and take this one. We're going to discard this card over here, and we're going to take this one, adding it to my board. Now this card only scores if it's in the center. It scores 12 points for being in the center and 8 points for being in the center in your hand. So that card, while it's helpful-ish, is not actually where it needs to be for us to score it. We're going to go back to this player's turn over here, and they can go ahead and take another turn. They can try to figure out what they want to do. This lane already works for them. They could take this. This gives them a lot of flexibility. So we're going to go ahead and take this, and we're going to put it, we're going to discard this card over here and place this card into my river. Into my line, I mean. This card over here is a ninja. They can replicate any character on the board. So not a location, but any character. They can double that character, becoming whatever that character is. Going back to that first character, now that we have this one in the wrong position, I'm going to show you another action you can take, which is, again, doing a develop your territory action. You can place this onto the board. That's only if there's a free spot, by the way. There's 3 for over here and 2 for here. And this one lets you switch things around. So, for example, you can switch things in between your line, in between your hand, hand, or matching from your hand to your line where things are, or even in the river in order to draft cards. In this case, we're going to swap this with this, placing that over there, and then we're going to discard this in order to take this guy. This one rewards us for having different card types, and we are slowly depleting through that row. That's going to be the core develop your territory action. You can take a card from the center, putting it into your line or in your hand, making sure to maintain its current position, and then before or after doing so, you can take one of these two actions, either discarding cards or swapping cards around. The other three actions you can take is going to be one of them over here is going to let you take cards from your opponent. For example, a really mean thing to do, but possibly worth doing, would be for me to take this on my next turn, place this here, and then you swap the exact relative things. So you go for the exact same column, and then line to line or hand to hand, and I get to take something from my opponent, and this is gone. This spot is locked, no one else can go through the whole game. That is it. The third action you can take is you can recall your emissaries. So right now, if it's their turn, they can take these back as a third action. That's the third thing you can do. And the last thing you can do, you can only do it if there's at least one empty column over there, one empty pile. But if there's one empty pile, you can trigger endgame. Your opponent gets one more turn, so make sure you know what you're doing over there. But your action is saying, I think I got this. We're going to trigger endgame. Alternatively, if you don't do that, game end will trigger when a second pile runs out instead. That is basically how you play Naishi. There are 4 actions you can take. The main action is going to be developing your territory, developing your land. You're going to be taking a card from the center, putting it into your line or into your hand, possibly using actions along the way to modify that action. Then there's going to be this action over here, which is you steal a card from your opponent once per game, but you lose one of your emissaries. The third action is recalling your emissaries, and the fourth action is triggering endgame, all while you try to manage the different types of cards, how they all score for you, and making sure to get them into the right spots as you play. That's basically what's happening in this game, which brings me to my review of what I like, don't like, and conceal as not liking. And let's start off with what I like over here. The game is very simple as far as what you're trying to do, but there's a lot of actions, a lot of optimization as far as trying to balance what you can get out of the system, how you can optimize your score in the game. Because you start off with a whole bunch of mountains, and mountains are kind of just placeholders for you for the most part, although by the time you get to the end of the game, you may end up scoring too many of them and losing a few points. But the cards you have all reward you for different things, and very often reward you for adjacencies. We didn't get into a lot of the scoring types going on, but for example, this card over here basically wants a field of connected wheat, and if you can do that, you can get as much as 30 points over here. In a game where any score can be anywhere between 60 to 90 points, getting 30 points for having 4 wheat cards in your board can be incredibly advantageous, but you have to balance that with everything you're trying to do. There's going to be that character over there who wants you to have different cards. You can't do the wheat along with that character, or at least you can't benefit from the wheat along with that character, because trying to get 45 points from a single card, while doable, requires you to really commit and give up almost everything else you're doing. And so you're really juggling, trying to figure out how to draft these cards into the right spots, how to manage your emissaries over here, how to take the right actions, and to kind of build your way towards a better line faster than your opponent is doing so, because eventually at some point, someone's going to trigger the game end. So it's a very fast-paced moving game. It plays like you play a round like 20 minutes, and then you could play multiple rounds and call it one game, so to speak, or you could just play a single game and just go back and forth that way. But a game is playing like 20 to 30 minutes. They give you a lot of strategy as far as how to make everything work, and they give you some degree of variability as far as the different challenges and different pathways, the different ways to combine your score you can try to take advantage of as you try to get everything in its right spot. And then the tension of the actions, especially this particular action over here, you almost need to take it to stop your opponent from taking it and stealing your card, but getting rid of one of your emissaries can be really hurtful as far as your ability to modify things, as far as your ability to relocate things in different areas, to control the board. So it really is a tough degree of tension as to when that specific move is taken, and it's incredibly punishing but satisfying when it is. As far as things I don't like in the game, the main thing is going to come down to the variability or possibly lack thereof. You always have the same 10 cards in the game. I think it's 10, I have to double check, but I think it's 10 cards plus the mountains. You always have the same cards that are in the game every single time you play. Maybe it's 11. I have to double check the exact count. There's not a ton of cards going on, and they're always in play, which means you're kind of playing with something that will get a little bored or a little static as you play through multiple games. There's not a lot of us mixed in different card combinations to figure out how I can optimize this. And I think it's something that easily could be done with expansions. Based on the way adjacency works in the game, it's very often based on symbols, so you can try to proxy in different symbols. I also want to see like a Citadel style gameplay where you have the core colors, but then different cards that proxy in each time, so you have more variability to the game experience. Because the biggest challenge with it is I've played this game a bunch. I find it a lot of fun. I'll get into it in final thoughts. But the problem is that from having played this game, even just the first week, getting a bunch of games in, it's one of those things where I feel I've tried different strategies. I've done the whole all-week strategy. I've gone for the, I think it's called Ronin, I can't recall what this character's called, but it gives you 45 points for having 10 different cards in your display, which means every card has to be unique. That's insane, and getting those 45 points, plus each card scoring its own 5-10 points, I've maxed out to like 93 points or something like that, which is incredibly satisfying. But that means that I've tried different strategies. I've kind of seen the main ways that the core ways to score that can be played out. Now, there's still a lot of gameplay to it because you are wrestling with another person. You are trying to go back and forth and you're facing off against them. It's not a single solo game where I've done my own little puzzle. No, we are facing off against this battlefield. We are trying to take cards from the same center row, and so trying to figure out the maximizations. Or there's all the archers next to forts. I've done that. Like, I found these different ways to try to pursue the strategies, and I look forward to having other card combinations, if this is something that's expanded upon, to be able to mix and match so that you never really have the exact same card combos. Because I think my biggest struggle with this one is I really like the engine. I like the hand management, the inability to modify your hand without using abilities. I like all of that as far as how the core structure of this game works. I just want more variability as far as the actual card types, so that it doesn't fall into patterns of what I find most optimal. Again, with the acknowledgement that depending on what comes out, as well as depending on what your opponent's doing, is going to force you to consider things even within the same card sets. As far as I can see, that's not liking. The biggest thing is going to be this action right here, stealing a card from another player. If you're working your way towards things, again, if you're trying to get 10 unique cards and I take one from you, and then you can't get that card, that can be incredibly punishing and not a feel-good moment for you. I like the tension it introduces, and games are short enough that I don't mind, and it can be satisfying to do it, as well as satisfying to see your opponent do it at the right time, but it definitely is a strong degree of take that in a game that's otherwise about building out your own tableau, and then suddenly someone steals a card from you. It kind of can feel a little bit out of left field if that's not what you signed up for. As far as final thoughts on Naishi, I really like this game. I find it incredibly satisfying. Again, that one thing I want is I want that variability to the core puzzle so I can feel more of a sense of different strategies as I pursue this. But overall, the game teaches very quickly. It plays very quickly. It gives you you can play a bunch of rounds at once. You can play back to back and try to add up your scores. But ultimately, it is satisfying to build out a well-scoring row, a well-scoring combination of your hand and your line. It is just satisfying when you do that, and there's a lot of back and forth with the opponent of choosing to trigger endgame and then forcing them to have one more turn to get things going, stealing cards, taking cards that they want, discarding cards that might be good for them in order to get to cards that are good for you. There's a lot of small little ways that this really feels like a two-player tug-of-war, even as you just work towards your own thing. Overall, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. It's a satisfying puzzle. I could see it going higher. This has a lot of things that I find very similar to many two-player head-to-head games that I very much enjoy. For right now, the variability, the way that I feel I've already seen a lot of the ways things can come together, that's the one thing that's really holding it back for me, at least as of right now. As far as other game recommendations, definitely check out Hanamakoji. This game very much reminded me of Hanamakoji in both the theme of it to a certain extent, but also just the puzzle of trying to figure out what you need and where you need it, and also just the tad bit of screwage that there is in the game. And then also check out Sushi Go. The way each card has its own little scoring puzzle, and the way those combine different ways, that scoring system maybe it felt very reminiscent of Sushi Go. Very different puzzle. Sushi Go is a lot more just draft and build your own thing. This one is a lot more of a tense two-player back and forth. But if you like that kind of, hey, here's a bunch of cards and they all score a bit different, now let me see how I can take advantage of that, that felt very reminiscent of Sushi Go. Oh, by the way, if you are getting Sushi Go, get Sushi Go Party. I think it's the best version of the game. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.